Welcome, everybody. My name is Jeff Green. Thank you for joining us for the July 2021 Housing Market Update. I'll be your host today. Let's jump right in. Here's a look at our panel who we're going to check in with in just a little bit. Got some interesting people with a lot of experience that are going to weigh in on all the information that I'm presenting to you right now. So we're going to be talking a lot about buyer fatigue today. Because that seems to be setting in around the country as well as our marketplace. So it'll be interesting to see what our panel has to say about it. But here was a home purchase sentiment index, and it's down to a lowest level in a year where people do not think it's a good time to buy. More people do not think it's a good time to buy than do think it's a good time to buy. So that's a bit of a problem because, you know, we want people to be enthusiastic about purchasing a home. It's kind of what we do and what we talk about here every month in the Housing Market Update. But the numbers reflect that, you know, showings are still very strong, albeit they're lower than they were in March and April, which is a little bit unseasonable. I mean, you know, showings usually continue to, you know, gain lots of traction right up until June, July, and then there's usually a lull in the summertime. But the showing, traffic is still happening. But basically, there's, you know, 5 things that are ultimately causing the perception to be a little bit fatigued for buyers, which is price appreciation has just absolutely skyrocketed in the last 12 months. The low inventory has caused all of these bidding wars, many of which people have lost, and you know, it's a hard thing being declined in anything that you do in life. And if you're a buyer who's put offers in on multiple properties and your offer has never been accepted, that's it's deflating. There's been a high percentage of sales over list price. In other words, not everything, but lots of properties are being bid up over the asking. So that's a bit exhausting, right? Because you never really know how far you need to go. So there's a lot of mental strain just to make that decision on what you want to do. There's been a record low days on market. In other words, things like you have to be on it all the time. Because if you miss it, if you snooze for one day, the house that you want could be gone. And ultimately the mortgage rates, which have been historically low, are inching up. So there's a lot of pressures being put on buyers, and they're tired, you know, they're being fatigued. So this is a quick look. We're going to take another look at this in a little bit, but you know, all of these organizations that are formidable and are projecting price, you know, increase or decrease for many years are projecting an increase on average of 8.2% for 2021. That's a big increase. That's, you know, more than double the historic average of roughly 4%. What JP Morgan here says, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I don't want to lull you to sleep, but the bottom line is they're saying if you are looking to purchase a new home, conditions now may be better than 12 months hence. So despite the fatigue, you need to carry on the battle here and try to get it done. And I think I agree with that. We're going to check in with the panel and see what they have to say. Months of inventory of homes for sale. You know, if you're starting to think as a buyer, well, I'm just waiting for the bubble to burst. You know, this housing market is a bubble. Well, I'm not so sure that that's really the case. And this is really the main reason why that is. If you look, you know, at the last run up here where there was a massive increase in price right here, there was also a run up in inventory. Okay. And we just haven't seen that at all. In fact, we've seen as the market's gotten hotter, the inventory get lower, which means that it's a traditional supply and demand situation that we have on our hands here, which ultimately means that it shouldn't be a bubble. I mean, there's more buyers, and there should be more buyers for quite a long time than there are homes for sale. It's just that simple. So everything should be able to be absorbed for quite some time. You know, in the last year, home equity has skyrocketed. People that have owned homes have done very well. And, you know, that's my biggest concern is for those that do not yet own a home. I think people that are looking to trade up or trade down, move up, move down, so to speak, those people are okay. But, you know, the people that are renting, trying to break through into home ownership are the people that I'm most concerned about. That's inflation is impacting them the most. Inventory levels are coming up a little bit. You know, although they're still very low and not where they need to be, they are inching up. Now, seasonal fluctuations have a lot to do with that. We didn't see much of a change nationally during the month of March and April. So the increase came a little bit later, but that's all to be expected with the year that we just went through. It was just kind of a topsy-turvy year. And then here's, you know, George Raitu, senior economist at Realtor.com, is saying basically just what I said, that sellers are entering the market historically later in the season. But I think that that's more pandemic related than anything else. I think it's, you know, the pandemic has just thrown so many for a loop that it's just taking longer to make decisions. But the fact of the matter is people are bringing their homes to market, which is good. So here are some talking points for those that are sellers. I think this is very important because there are a lot of sellers out there thinking about listing their home, or they do have them on the market, and some of them aren't selling. And quite frankly, it all comes back to price. You know, I've always said everything will sell at the right price. But the number one thing that, you know, I think our panel would agree on is, you know, don't be too unrealistic. You know, I mean, in such a hot market that we're in today, you can actually be a little unrealistic and get it done still. But if you get a little bit crazy with your price, it's not going to happen, you know. And the worst part is that you're going to miss out on this extremely attractive market. I mean, I've told a lot of my clients, you know, what you want to focus on right now is maximizing this market opportunity. Okay. It's not about what you want for your property or how much, you know, you think it can sell for. It's about getting as much as you possibly can when you're looking to make that move. And it's an unbelievably good time to make that sale, you know? So you just want to maximize it. You want to ring the towel and get what you can. Don't worry about what the number is. Just make sure that you get as much as you can. So listen to your realtor. That's the bottom line. It's really, truly never been a better time to sell. I mean, honestly, in the history of the real estate market, there has never been a better time to sell than it is right now. And look, like everything else, this too shall pass. You know, this market is not going to be around forever. So, you know, the price appreciation, it will moderate as rates and inventory rise later this year. And that is true. You know, rates are going to continue to rise. We're going to check in with Laura Moritz in a bit to see if she agrees with that. But inventory is going to come back, you know. So let's take a look at some more forecasts here. Here's some mortgage rate projections. You know, when you add it all up, the average of all four, I like to look at this column here on this chart, 3.5, 3.47. So, you know, you're talking about coming up almost half a point, basically, over the course of the year of a 12-month period. So that's significant for somebody who's got to get a $500,000 mortgage, let's say. It's going to add some monthly carry to it. Again, here's the house price forecasts. And again, an average of 8.9, you know, that's a big number. It's a big number. So what's going to help bring more inventory to the market? Well, builders are increasing production. We've been talking about lumber prices over the last 12 months, and they are easing. Prices are, you know, starting to come down as supply chains get back online. You know, hopefully labor continues to become more available, because that is a factor too. I don't know about you guys, but it's hard to find people to get work done. It's difficult. Everybody's busy. Those affected by the pandemic will begin listing. That's also another factor, right? A lot of people did not put their home on the market because they didn't want strangers walking through their house. They were afraid of getting the virus. And again, people with health concerns will list as vaccinations increase. Those are all reasons that will bring more inventory to the market. But I also think, and we have a slide coming up here about second home purchases. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But so that everybody is, you know, I get this question a lot, you know, do you think there's going to be a huge amount of foreclosures, or people borrowing more than they can afford? Are they getting in over their heads? Well, not really, you know, and the percentages of forbearances actually are decreasing. And this chart shows you here where we were last year in May, and where we are in June of 21. So it's roughly half of where we were. So no, people are continuing to pay their mortgages and stay in. They see their home as an extremely good asset, and that's a really good thing because it is. So the second home market surged in 2020, and that really, in my opinion, caused a lot of strain on the suburban marketplaces, if you will. A lot of people from the inner cities, maybe they sold altogether, maybe they just moved out, maybe they were renting because they couldn't afford the high prices in the urban centers, but their income allowed them to buy very substantial homes out in suburbs. So, but this trend is not going to continue. You know, the pandemic, as it eases, you know, is, you know, going to show that people are not going to buy as many second homes. People that did buy second homes are going to maybe reconsider that and start selling. I do believe that that's going to happen as people start to get called back into their office places in the urban centers. So this market surge of second homes that we saw in 2020, I think this is going to be one of the reasons why we see inventory come back to the market, because I do not think this will keep pace in 21. Check out the stats that we show you each month. We take a look at three things: existing home sales, sale price, and months of inventory. And you can see here, existing home sales are still up. Okay. These are big numbers that are still turning in, and there's really no sign of it necessarily easing. I mean, maybe it'll ease, but it's certainly not going to crash precipitously. There's a lot of reasons why there's still going to be a lot of home sales nationally, and prices are just soaring. You know, I mean, inflation is here on the consumer goods side. It's been here on the real estate side now for a couple of years at least. You know, I mean, you can see these price increases. You can really see there was a turning point, right? I mean, this is the 2020 graph. Pandemic hit, boom, prices just shot right up. But when you take a look at the last, 5 years here, prices have been on the rise. But they should have been, because there was an 8-year-long depression in prices. Basically, prices decreased for 8 years, from 2008 all the way through 2016. So this bounce back was likely to happen, but it was definitely sped up and exacerbated by the pandemic. You can see this variance here and this variance here. That's a result of the pandemic. Months of supply, you can see, again, the lower the line, the tighter the market, meaning the less inventory there is, and it is low. It is extremely low. And again, take a look at where the break happened, right? Pandemic hit. And at first, inventory was there, but then people started getting out and buying, and wow, did it really just plummet. And that's really why you're seeing this buyer fatigue, is really a result of this lack of inventory. All right, so some housekeeping items here, and then we're going to get to the panel. Our next housing market update is August 17th at noon. Please join us then. You can always stay tuned to hmupdate.com. And a thank you to our sponsor, NewOp, the Business Opportunity Exchange. It's a simple tool for business professionals to track and exchange referrals with speed and ease. You can check it out at newop.com, N-U-O-P. All right, let's get to our panel. Welcome, ladies. We have Kristi Anderson, Laura Moritz, and Keren Gonen. Kristi, I see you on the left part of my screen, so let's start with you. Just any general comments about the things that we've spoken about? I have some specific questions, but I figured I'd let you go for
it. It's basically still the same out there, just crazy. Like you said, not enough inventory for the buyers. So we're still struggling with that.
Yeah. One thing I heard you say before we went live on the meeting was that, well, now instead of 10 offers coming in on my listings, I have 3. So are you seeing a little bit of a decrease in the intensity in the market? I mean, it's still intense, but is it maybe just a tick lower?
Correct. Just a little bit. Still getting multiple offers, just not as many. I don't know if that has to do with maybe vacations, that a lot of people are taking vacations, or if maybe some of the buyers are just holding off right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what are your thoughts about the second home market? Do you agree with me that we're not going to see such a robust second home purchase in 21? as we
I
get going?
have not seen that as much as I did last year.
Right. Right.
I live in a community where we have a lot of second homes,
Mhm.
and out of like 10 houses by me that sold, I would say 7 of them are probably second homes for them. And I'm not seeing that as much this year. I would
Right.
say it's more first time home buyers, and I have quite a few people, quite a few clients either upgrading or downgrading.
Mm. So move up, move down, and first time home buyers rather than the second home buyer. And I see that as a really good thing, right? Because those are the people that really need to make that move, and they're here in the communities wherever they're buying full time. And
Right,
I
and
think that's
hopefully
important.
stay.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it behooves all of us for lots of people to own homes. So if you have fewer people gobbling up all the inventory, that's not necessarily good for society as a whole. So it's a good thing. So maybe this is the chance. Maybe 21 and 22 is the chance for the first time home buyer again. Maybe they're back in the game now, because they were competing against big money from the urban centers. That's
Yes.
basically what it was coming down to, right? So Karen, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you echo Kristi's thought that it's maybe a tick lower in intensity?
I actually am. It is just literally a tiny, tiny bit. The buyer profile is yet again changing. So instead of a buyer going out with the agent, putting an offer on one house, they're actually putting multiple offers on different properties. And
Yeah.
with that being the case, listing agents, as Kristi mentioned, we need to be a lot more careful with the different offers that we choose to have to assist our clients or advise our clients to take for that reason. I
Mm.
have one house in Vernon that we took one offer, fell through, we took a second offer, and those people had put offers in New York also and ended up taking that property even though they already had us an attorney review. So I think listing agents are working a lot harder than we had before. It's not because houses are selling faster, which is fabulous for listing agents. It's because the buyer profile is changing somewhat. So you really need to have a listing agent that knows what they're doing and knows how to qualify the different buyers. I know that my buyers, I have buyers I took out on Saturday. We saw 17 houses and put 0 offers because those we liked already had offers. And my buyers didn't want to be competing in the highest and best. So the buyers are changing. They're a lot more educated than they were a year ago as well. They come to me and they already know everything they need to do. So in a way it's good, and in a way it's bad because they're coming to us with their own ideas of how they want to buy a house.
Yeah. Chalk that up to HGTV, I think, right?
I think so too. Yeah, and the other thing is the investors are having a blast. I have investors that are taking up all the properties that are in not so good condition because the buyers are looking for newer homes and they're just renting them out at great investment prices for them, but that's not necessarily the best for the renters themselves. So
Right. Right.
there's definitely a big shift. I have 3 or 4 investors. They've bought over 10 houses, in this past year, and the rental prices are just through the roof, and people are getting into it because they don't have another option.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's part of the fatigue syndrome, right? It's like people have just had enough, so they're willing to do whatever it takes to try to get it done. And it hasn't worked in other ways. And now they're trying this. And it's like, things are a little bit haywire. But
Exactly.
I do get a sense though that things are going to settle in, as this year continues to go on. Another thing that I heard, discussion with the panel before we went live was travel. People are just traveling right now. They're getting back out there because they couldn't last year. They needed to get out. They were cooped up. And so maybe a lot of that, the fact that they're traveling is leading to the fact that they're not looking to buy right now. They're kind of holding off and just taking a trip, just decompressing. So I think there's some of that there too.
Absolutely.
Um, all right. So then, what about the seller's advice? In the talking point slide there, I thought, price is everything. I always say that to sellers, right? Like 95% of marketing your home is in the list price that you choose. So are you still finding that you're having a hard time? And I'm going to ask both of you this question right now before we head over to Laura to wrap it up, and we'll talk about the mortgage part of things. Do you find that you have a lot of unrealistic sellers?
I
Are
do.
people just trying to get too much and they're going to miss this market? Karen, you
Yes,
go
and I
first.
actually share that with them. I tell them, listen, I think we're going to sell at this price. I'll do whatever you want. However, I need you to understand that our price is too high. So we may not get the traffic that you're expecting. However, if we list it at a realistic price, we may get a bidding more going. So it just depends which route or strategy the seller prefers, and it's always up to them.
Hmm. Kristi, are you thinking the same thing, or are you having a lot of those conversations too?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly how some of the sellers are thinking.
Yeah. It's a funny thing. I come from a family of real estate brokers, and recently had a situation where I was trying to compel some family members to sell real property that we own, and they fell into the trap. Oh, that number is ridiculous. It was as if I was talking to somebody that doesn't know the industry. And it's like, the market's only gonna, buyers don't care about what you think of the value of a home, right? Like, your valuation doesn't really matter. It's what the market is willing to provide you. That's really what it comes down to. So the smart seller tries to really use the information at hand to understand what the market might yield them, regardless of what their number is in their head. You have to try to understand what the market might yield to you. So, and then I just think it's a critical mistake for sellers to be playing with. It's like playing with fire right now, right? Like, if they think, oh, I'm just going to hold out for my price for the next 2 to 3, 4 years, whatever it might be. I don't know about that. I get the sense that this market is cooling a little bit, and you're not going to see all these huge bidding wars over the course of the next 12 months. I do think that it's going to settle here. And this remarkable marketplace that we've had for the last 12 months might not look the same 12 months from now, for the sellers, at least. So, all right, let's transition to Laura. Laura, let's talk about mortgages. You can unmute yourself. How do you think, everyone seems to think rates are going to move up, just not all that much. I'm continuing to talk while you're unmuting your mic so that we can keep people engaged.
Sorry, I'm muted.
There you go. There you go.
Hello.
Do you agree with that? Are rates like on the rise, just not precipitously?
Well, we actually had a little dip earlier this week with result to the bond and some of the economic news that came out, but no one is expecting that that's going to stick. It was just a short-term little dip.
Right.
What we're really expecting is that we're going to continue to inch up. As you said earlier, it's not going to be a monumental 1% increase in a month. But I do expect personally by the end of the year that we'll be close to 4. That's what I'm thinking. What people don't understand, I've been in the mortgage industry for 33 years. And I remember, Jeff, selling mortgages at 22% in New Jersey, 15%, 19%. But I'm talking about 19% with 12 points to buy the rate down.
Wow.
Those were legitimately what the rates were in the early 80s, So yeah. What people don't really factor is what a big difference a 1% gain in interest rate is going to make in what you can't buy as far as a house price.
Right.
You're waiting for house prices to quote unquote settle down as the rates continue to go up.
You're actually costing yourself more money.
That's right. You'll be able to buy at this time next year less of a house if you wait, just because. It's not really, you're not purchasing the price of the home. For the most part, you're purchasing the price tag or the monthly payment. So that's really what I've been working with is helping people psychologically get over the fact that, it doesn't have to be 2 point something for it to be an excellent rate. And you will never see rates like this ever again, probably in our lifetime. My personal opinion.
Well, hopefully. I say hopefully because there's a lot of concern from a global financial standpoint, with all of the quantitative easing that's happened over the last decade. It's almost, these central banks don't know what to do about rates. It's like they fear raising them because of just all the situations that are going on around the earth. And you know, it'll be interesting to see if rates actually do go back to the 6.5%, 7% rate where I started when I bought my first home, you know. I don't know, things were different. You know, there was not this huge amount of debt on the balance sheets of all these countries when the rates were up that high. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. You know, and then you throw consumer inflation on top of everything, Laura, you know,
Yeah,
which is yet another factor which erodes the wealth and the income of individuals and their ability to buy something. Right?
absolutely. And to your point, you had said something earlier about the foreclosure and the default rate. And I can tell you right now that lenders, I mean, we get loans seamlessly approved every day, but you must be, it's a very precise process. So they're making a lot better decisions, I would say, that are going to prevent people from ever seeing those, what we had seen in the past as far as people that defaulted because they just couldn't afford the monthly payment after they closed. They were qualified too generously, let's just say, or I'm seeing that the decision making is a lot more logical and a lot more structured than it was in years past.
Decision making on behalf of the underwriters who are granting loans to individuals, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. There's more
Yeah.
checks and balances in place where the decision making that's associated with underwriting Fannie Mae, FHA, all products of loans.
Right.
Plus government regulations that prevents a lot of the non-traditional products, even from, funding. I don't think we're going to see what we've seen in the past as far as people defaulting, if the market does.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think that's been the case now for a lot of years.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you lived through that subprime mortgage crisis, and I mean, that was a nightmare.
Yep.
That last financial crisis was literally created by those mortgage-backed securities. You know, I mean, that's what happened. It was all this crazy financial engineering going on, but they largely cleaned that up after the market had crashed. And from what I can tell, just by being on these housing market updates every month and talking to the lenders who are the troops with the boots on the ground, there's not a whole lot of subprime lending going on. There's some stated loans and this, that, the other thing, but not much.
Well, because the Ability to Repay Act passed in 2008 made them illegal for the most part on a federal level. So, I mean, I have a borrower who's got $50 million in the bank, but he doesn't have any income. So just because you have a lot of strength on one side of the equation doesn't forgive the others, the other side. So you're not going to see the default rate that you did in the past if the market does ever so slightly shift or shift, even on a larger scale.
If that person with 50 million in the bank would like to trade my income for his 50 million, I'd be happy to do that with him. You can let him know that.
I helped him convert. I also had another young man, 28 million he just got on that GameStop trade. He literally made it in 3 months, 28 million. So we had to convert his $28 million of cash into income where he doesn't qualify for a mortgage, believe it or not.
Right.
So there's mechanisms, there's ways for me to do that. But just going back to your point, just in general terms, the underwriting process, it's not harder necessarily to get a loan, but it for most people, but you do have to dot every I and cross every T. So there's no cheating, there's no cutting, you can't forgive one document. So I don't think you're going to see the default rates like you have in the past when the market moves.
I agree. I mean, the only thing that would precipitate a massive foreclosure situation would be a massive slide in price of real property, which would mean that people are holding on to an asset that is far undervalued as compared to their mortgage principal balance. And I don't see that happening, so therefore I don't think that we're going to have a foreclosure crisis on our hands. That's just not going to happen. I think you'll see, we're going to see pressure in other ways. I don't see it being in the housing market. I think it's going to come in other ways. Okay. Any other final thoughts by anybody? We're going to wrap it up here. I just want to go ahead and show everybody's contact information because in all seriousness, for anyone who's watching this right now, these are three extremely formidable females who I love to work with, all three of them. They are great, really good at what they do. Kristi Anderson, Green Team New Jersey Realty, that's her cell phone number right there. Keren Gonen, Green Team New Jersey Realty, that's her cell phone. And Laura Moritz, Classic Mortgage, her cell phone there. That's how you can reach out to them. Thank you everybody for showing up. We'll see you next month.